Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kof. We are talking about cases of indirect damage, and we start. Itmar Hamar'e dinar lashulchan nimsar ra. Taneh hada uman patur hedyot hayav. V'taneh idach ben uman ben hedyot hayav. If I have a coin and I want to make sure it's a legitimate coin, not a counterfeit, and I go and I show it to a money changer, and money changers, they should know, they're dealing with that all day, and the money changer tells me it's a good coin. And so then, I accept it from whoever's giving it to me, and then I try to use it, and it turns out, actually, it was counterfeit. It's a bad coin. It could be counterfeit, or just that it's rubbed out and smudged, and it was not acceptable in the marketplace. So now I relied on the money changer, and the money changer made a mistake. It's not his fault. He tried, but he didn't look carefully enough, or he didn't. He just made a mistake. He made an error. So who's responsible? Taneh hada uman patur hedyot hayav. One baraita says if the money changer was an expert, then he's not liable. Because what can he do? He's an expert, so he's authorized to be able to give a judgment about it. But sometimes even an expert makes a mistake, so you can't hold him liable. Whereas a layperson, an ordinary person, would be liable because it's not his place to give a judgment as if he knows. He's giving misleading information. He should know his own limitations. It's like someone giving medical advice who's not a doctor. He's kind of professing as if he knows what he's talking about. If a doctor makes a mistake, he's an expert. Okay, could be he makes a mistake, but at least he has training. He's doing his best. Whereas a layperson should say, I don't know, don't ask me, go ask an expert. So therefore a layperson is liable. That's one baraita. V'tanya idach ben uman ben hedyot hayav. Another baraita says, doesn't matter whether even if he's an expert or a layman, nevertheless, he is liable, right? The shulchani should have, if he doesn't know, he should say, I don't know, or he should have made sure. If you ask a person, layperson or money changer, and he gives a confident answer, yes, it's a good coin, then he has to stand behind that, and he's responsible if he makes an error. Amar Papa, Kitanya uman patur kegon danchu ve'isur dela sirich lemigmar kelal. The Papa says, so we have a contradiction between these two baraitot. The Papa reconciles them, and he says the first baraita that says an expert is not liable, that's only an expert like these two guys, Danku and Isur. These were two famous money changers, experts, world experts. They don't need to learn anything at all. They know everything there is to know about currency. There's nothing else they took all the courses. They have a doctorate in it, and there's nothing else for them to learn. So since they're a great experts, they are not liable to pay if they make a mistake. So now we ask, wait a second, if they're such great experts that they know everything about it, then how could it be that they made a mistake? We're talking about a new press, a new coin that just came hot off the press, and they made an error just at that time when it was leaving the press, and they didn't know, they weren't familiar with it yet, and it looked like something that they thought that they knew, but it turns out it was a new thing that they didn't realize. And so it is even possible for them to make an error. So this is a case of indirect damage. It's not like the money changer did it directly. He didn't take the coin. He didn't destroy the coin. But indirectly, by giving wrong judgment, they caused the owner of the coin a loss. Hahi itita story. De'achazia dinara le'Rabbi Chaya. Amar la me'al Yahu. There was a woman. She had a coin. She asked Rabbi Chia, is this a good coin? Can you make a judgment for me? And he looked at it and he said, yes, it's a good coin. Turns out it wasn't. Next day she came to Rabbi Chia and said, I tried to use it in the market and they told me it's no good. And now I can't spend it. Amar le zil halfe nihala uchtov apim kasi den aesek bish. So Rav Chia went to Rav, said to Rav, I want you to go exchange it for her and write on my tablet that I made a bad transaction. I should have been more careful, right? This should be put on here's a pinkas. Pinax is a wax tablet that people use for writing and for record keeping. Let this be a memory for me that I made this mistake and I am liable. So here we see that Rabbi Chia, although it seems that he was an expert, nevertheless held himself liable. Now we ask, why did Rabbi Chia hold himself responsible to pay? What's the difference? How come Danku and Isud, we said that the first Baraita applies to them, that if they make a mistake, they're not liable. Why? Because they know everything about it. There's nothing for them to learn about currency, so they're off the hook. But Rabbi Chia also, he's a great expert, and so he should be not liable also. And the answer is Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chia, really from the letter of the law, did not have to pay. He was not responsible because he is a great expert. But Rabbi Chia wanted to go beyond the letter of the law, and so he said, I'll be responsible. Take it off of my ledger, and I'll pay you for it. The Hebrew lifnim mishat hadin here is translated beyond the letter of the law. Letter of the law is like the minimum that you have to do. Beyond is you do extra. In the Hebrew, actually, the imagery is shurat hadin, literally means the line of the law, and lifnim means within the line. The idea being, if you think of a border line, and so whatever's on my side is mine, whatever's on your side is yours. So that's shurat hadin, is exactly what I have a right to. I have a right to what's in my border and not beyond. Lifnim is that I'm going to withdraw my border into my own land a little bit in order to be extra careful, right? I'll leave a buffer zone so that I don't even come possibly to overstepping the boundary line. So in English, it's the letter of the law and beyond the letter of the law, but the Hebrew actually is to go to be within one's rights. In other words, to withhold the full extent of one's rights, of one's what they can do, and go within. So really, he didn't have to pay, but he wanted to be extra pious. As it says in Shemot Yudchet Parashat Yitro, that Moshe should teach them. So now we're going to take every phrase in this pasuk and say it refers to something else. So to show them, that refers to Bet Hayehem. Now she gives two interpretations in different places. Here it says that it's talking about Torah study. That's the core of existence. And another place he says it's talking about a livelihood. Right, Moshe, make sure that everybody has a livelihood. Et haderech zo gemilut hasadim, yelchu zo bikur holim, ba zo kebura. So the way, you have to teach the people acts of kindness. To walk, that's talking about visiting the sick. Ba is talking about burial of the dead, all great mitzvot. Et ha'maaseh zehadin asher yasun zo lifnim mishurat hadin. You should teach them the actions, that's referring to proper judgment, and that you should do, right, is referring to that they should go beyond the letter of the law, or people should withdraw themselves and not insist on everything that they have a right to. Sometimes it's proper to say, even though I don't have to pay you, you know what, I'll be extra nice and I'll pay you anyway. Resh Lakish achvi le dinara Rabbi Elazar. Another story, Resh Lakish showed a dinar coin to Rabbi Elazar to see, is this good or not? Amar Me'aliyahu, Rabbi Elazar said it's good. Amar le hazi datachka samchina. So Resh Lakish told Rabbi Elazar, listen, make sure because I'm relying on you. So he added that. Amar le ki samachta alai ma lememra. Resh Lakish says, Rabbi Elazar says, what did you mean by that when you added that line that you're relying on me? Right? What does that add? Do you mean that if it turns out that I said it's good and it turns out that it's bad, that I have to exchange it for you and I'm responsible? Is that what you're trying to say? So Rabbi Elazar says, Resh Lakish, you're the one that said that it's Rabbi Meir who judges, accepts the laws of indirect damage. And when you said that, didn't you mean that it's Rabbi Meir only as a minority opinion, but we don't follow his opinion. In other words, Resh Lakish seems to be trying to get Rabbi Elazar to be on the line and be responsible. But Rabbi Elazar answers, Resh Lakish, you yourself said that indirect causality of damages is the opinion only of Rabbi Meir, and I assumed when you said that you meant that halacha is not like him. So why are you saying I'm going to have a high level of responsibility for indirect cause, really halacha is not like Rabbi Meir, and I should not be liable for causing this loss indirectly. Resh Lakish answered, Amar le, la, Rabbi Meir usvidalan kebate. Resh Lakish says, when I said that that Rabbi Meir is the one that says you're responsible even for indirect damage, I meant it's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and that is the halacha. So I do think that anyone who causes indirect damage, like telling someone this is a good coin when it's actually a bad coin, is responsible, and that's why I'm emphasizing to you, right? Just know that I'm relying on you that this coin is good, and you'll be responsible if it's not. Okay, He Rabbi Meir. Where did Rabbi Meir say that one has a high level of responsibility even if the damage is indirect? Ilema Rabbi Meir. דתנן, דן את הדין, זיקת החייב, חייבת הזכאי, טימאת הטהור, טיהר את הטמא, מה שעשה עשוי, וישלם מביתו. Mishnah in Bechorot, it says if a judge gives a judgment, and it turns out he acquitted someone who's liable, or he said someone is liable, but really he's innocent, or he said something is tameh, but really it's tahor, or he said something is tahor, but really it's tameh. A judge who makes a mistake, what do? We say what his judgment stands, right? Whatever he said, we continues, and the judge has to pay himself. If the judge said A has to pay B, but it turns out A didn't have to pay, and A already gave the $100 to B, so the judge has to take out of his own home, from his own pocket, and give A, and say, I made a mistake, B gets to keep the money, and he has to pay A himself. So what you see here is that this is a Mishnah, it's a Stam Mishnah. We're assuming that's Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir says that even though it was unintentional and it's indirect causation. See, the judge did not take the money from A, but rather he just ordered A, you have to pay B. But A's the one that ended up paying. So the judge only indirectly caused a loss. And nevertheless, even though it's indirect, the judge is responsible. And so this is Rabbi Meir. So is this a source that Rabbi Meir holds such a person liable? No. Ha'itmar Allah amar Rabbi Il'a amar Rav v'hu shenatal v'natan beyad. The Rabbi Allah said in the name of Rav that this Mishnah only applies if the judge himself physically took the $100 from A and then gave it to B. So because of that, it's actually the judge directly caused this damage. He's the one that took the money in the first place. But if not, if he just gave the judgment, but he didn't actually take the money, that would be indirect, and he would not be responsible. And therefore, this is not a proof because this is actually a case of direct damages. So this can't be it. Ela Rabbi Meir Ditnan. So rather, we're still looking for a source where we see that Rabbi Meir says someone is liable for indirect damages. Maybe it's the Mishnah that we're about to learn on the other side of this daf. Lisbo wa lo adom uspao shachor shachor uspao adom. Rabbi Meir omer noten lo demeh samro hatam ka'abid beyadayim. So the Mishnah says, if someone took wool and gave it to a dyer and said, "Can you make this red?" Instead, he made it black, or he wanted it black. Instead, he made it red by mistake. Rabbi Meir says that the dyer has to pay for the value of the wool, because now the wool is the wrong color, not what he wanted, and he's going to have to the owner of the wool is going to have to get new wool. So you see that he is responsible, even though it's a mistake. So is this a case where we see the Rabbi Meir holds one liable? We answer no, because that's a case where he ruined it directly. This is not indirect causation. Could be he wasn't paying attention about which vat he was getting the color from, or he wasn't paying attention when the guy said, "I want black," and he just misregistered it. So it's a mistake, it's true, but the damage he did directly with his hands, so it's not a case of indirect damage. Therefore, this is not the source. Elaha Rabbi Meir Titnan. Hamsakech gafno al gabe tuvato shel havero, hare ze kidesh vechayav. Another Mishnah, Masechet Kilayim, says, and this is also stam, so we assume it's to be me'ir, that someone has grapevines, and the grapevines are growing long, and so the owner of the grapevines wants to stretch them out, and he puts it on top, his grapevines on top of someone else's grain, causing it to be kilayim, right? Ze kidesh means it become kilayim, and the owner of the vines caused the wheat to be prohibited, and so therefore the owner of the vine has to pay the owner of the wheat for the wheat. And so isn't this a good source where you see the Meir hold someone at a high level of responsibility? We answer no. Hatam nami kabid biyadayim. This is not indirect damage, it's direct damage. He physically took his vines and put it on the other person's grain, and even though it's not physical damage, it's legal damage because it's kilayim, still he's doing it directly. Rather it's the following. Let's say there's a partition between a vineyard and someone's grain, and the partition breaks, and now this is a problem because if you leave the partition down, the vines will grow and cause the grain to be prohibited. So the owner of the wheat says, Omer lo gedor, repair that breach. Nifretza omer lo gedor. Let's say he fixes it and then it breaks again. So the owner of the field says, you better fix that breach or else. If the vineyard says, I already fixed it once, I fixed it twice, so he gives up. The owner of the vineyard does not fix it, and the vines grow and go by themselves, and they grow into the wheat, causing the wheat to become kilayim. So the owner of the vineyard is responsible and has to pay for whatever wheat now got mixed in with the vines and is prohibited. And this is a case where it's indirect. The owner of the vine didn't do anything. He didn't move the vines. He actually just sat back and did nothing and did not fix the breach in the fence, causing his vines to be able to go on their own. So even though this is indirect action, nevertheless he is liable, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So here, this is the source where we see that Rabbi Meir holds such a person liable. Next Mishnah, that we already saw some of it, Hanoten semer la saba vikdicho yora noten lo deme samra. If someone gives wool to a dyer, and the dyer, he made the cauldron too hot, and he burnt it and ruined the wool, so the owner, the dyer, has to pay for the value of the wool that he destroyed. Seba'o ka'ur, im hashebach yater al yisi'ah noten lo et yisi'ah, im ha'yisi'ah yetera al hashebach noten lo et hashebach. If he dyed it, but he dyed it not in a great way. Ka'ur means he dyed it in such a way that it's not fully, it didn't take fully, or it's just partially dyed, and it doesn't look quite right. So he did it, but didn't do it in a good. He didn't do a good job. In that case, but he did dye it. So the dyer will give the wool back to the owner, but the owner has to pay something, but he can pay a lesser amount. Because the dyer did something wrong, so the owner will pay the lesser amount of the following two things. If the enhancement is more than the cost to the dyer, then the owner only has to pay the cost. The cost means the dyer put in whatever materials he used and his own labor that normally would be a lot for whatever job he's doing. So he put in $100 of labor and costs and materials. But the result is he made it $150 better. So normally you'd have to pay for the cost, but here, since he didn't do a great job, so he only has to pay for the cost of the dyer, and not for the value of the enhancement. And on the other hand, if the expenses of the dyer were more than the enhancement, then the owner only has to pay for the enhancement, right? The guy put in $150 worth of materials and work, but because he did the bad job, it's only worth $100 more than it was before. So then the owner says, I don't care how much work you did you did a bad job, and it's only worth $100 more. He can pay only the $100. So the point is that the dyer did do some job. It's just that it wasn't a very good job. So, but it still is something. So the owner gets this item, but he gets a discount and pays the lesser amount, whichever one is lesser of the enhanced value versus the expenses. Now, next case, lisboa lo adom v'spal shachor. Shachor v'spal adom. Rabbi Meir omer noten lo deme samro. If the owner gave him wool and said, "Can you make it red?" But he made it black. Can you make it black? But he made it red. Rabbi Meir, as we saw earlier, says the dyer has to pay the value of the wool, because now the wool is the wrong color, not what he wanted. So pay him the value of that raw material that he gave in the first place. However, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda omer, im hashebach yeter al siyah, noten lo siyah. Im yeter al shebach, noten lo et hashebach. As we said in the case before, Rabbi Yehuda applies that also here. Says, well, he did dye the wool, so it is worth more than it was before, even though it's the wrong color. Still, there's enhancement, and he put money into it. So the Yehuda says, since he dyed it if he dyed it the right color, then obviously he has to pay whatever the price they agreed upon. But if not, then the owner has the upper hand and can pay the lesser of the two values. If the enhancement of the enhanced value is more than the expenses, then the owner only pays the expenses. And if the expenses are more than the enhanced value, he only pays the enhanced value, and the owner gets the wool, the dyed wool. It's the wrong color, but he gets to pay a discount. My kaur. What does this mean that it was done in an ugly way? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Abba bar Hana, kilabus. It says it was kilabus, which may mean like striped or something like that. There's some different possible meanings here. Or it looks like tongues. It looks like this, when you print something and you're out of ink and they get all lines in it. So something like that. It is dyed, but it doesn't look great. The Gemara itself doesn't know what kilabus means. My kilabus amaraba bar Shemuel kafra dude, that the dyer used the sediments of the dye in the cauldron, meaning that he had a nice batch of dye. He used it, and now there was just some leftovers on the bottom. So literally, it's like when the ink runs out, and you're just using the leftovers of ink in the bottom of the cartridge. So the dyer just used the sediment at the bottom of the cauldron to dye it, so it didn't take well, and so there's streaks and lines in it. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.